So back to the Trail Gear Economy Toyota swap kit for a rear disc brake conversion. I pressed this one stud here in, but the knurling, that's just witness marks from the axle, because the axle already had studs pressed into it previously that I removed. These are extended studs that are supposed to go through the spacer and be pressed into the axle. They didn't knurl these studs long enough. You can take a look here. They're 5/8 of an inch to this point right here. It's 5/8 of an inch from the inside of this ring, from the inside of the rotor to the outside of this ring is 5/8 of an inch. So when that thing sits in there, it only presses up to that point. That means it'll never ever press into this axle. I emailed Trail Gear, and they apparently have their engineers working on it. Well, I too happen to be an engineer and a machinist, and I own my own lathe. So I told them what the solution is. Knurl it. I don't have a straight knurl. So my solution was to put a regular knurl, and I dropped it down, so instead of running it on both wheels, if you get a crisscross pattern, if you run it on both wheels. So I'm running just one knurl, and this is a light duty lathe. I have the threads kind of protected with just paper, cardstock. I don't have any light sheet metal here that's light enough to protect it. I would use like 10/1000 copper and wrap it around it optimally, but I don't actually have any here at home, so I decided to use cardstock instead and wrapped it a few times around it. That protects the threads from getting damaged. So as you can see, my knurl is almost all the way formed, as much as the straight cut knurl is formed. So I'm going to do a couple more passes on this thing and use Liberal cutting oil. And don't knurl your brush, because it just chomps the whole thing through here while it's running. And there you have it. I've got a fully formed knurl that should press back into that hub and give me a 1/4 inch of press back into that axle shaft. So if there's any proof in the pudding, there it is. The studs now hold the axle on, and the rotor and spacer. So I really did solve the problem by knurling the axle lugs. So they all pound flush, no problem. You could use a press, but you know, a hammer works just fine. So there you go. I sent the problem back to Trail Gear. We'll see what they have to say about it, but I'm considering this problem for myself solved. All right, so I finished the disc brakes conversion for the 85 Trail Gear kit. So I bought new calipers, brackets. I had to grind them to get them to fit. So that was the other side of the problem with this kit, was there's a little bit of a boss right here on that they didn't take into account for. So when the bracket went on, you can see how tight it fits around there. I had to grind it so that it wouldn't hit that bracket, because when I first mocked it up, this thing was all warped because it didn't bolt to the flange face. It was actually bolting on to different spots on this thing. So I have I think their kit's about 70% ready for market between the problems with the lug studs that I saw and this grinding issue that I had to grind the plate in 3 places. I think that it's kind of about 70% ready. Seems like it'll work all right once it's, but you got to be paying attention to what you're doing.